the Ideas podcast. This time we have a quote from Paul Graham where he says, a one-line thought experiment. Imagine 5 years out if models have improved on Fable as much as Fable has improved on GPT-3. Peyton, what does your imagination point towards? What kind of world would we live in?
It is a crazy thought experiment. And the craziest part about it is it's to me, this appears actually almost overdetermined that it will be there, except it will happen in much less than 5 years. And so what on earth is this going to look like? And just to flavor the thought experiment a bit with my sense of the capabilities of both of these models to look at the chasm. I think that it's several orders of magnitude of more compute went into the training and more sophistication and research and resources went into the building of these two models. The capability difference between them is it's really hard to overstate. It's like GPT-3 was so basic that it was effectively just in autocomplete and a noisy autocomplete. This was a generation before ChatGPT launched in 2022, and an autocomplete that could write interesting lines. It could be a chatbot that could be fine-tuned and trained for basic customer service things that would need escalated pretty quickly as soon as anything was out of the normal range of common FAQs. It could write sentences at a time, but not really coherent paragraphs at a time. And now literally superhuman in many domains. It's actually significantly, noticeably smarter than me in most ways, although it's not completely, it goes much further as a centaur and actually collaborating with it. There's no denying that. And there's some things that it still lacks, of course, but the power behind the current Fable model is unbelievable. The fact that it could go find massive day zero security vulnerabilities in literally most of the most secure infrastructure of the entire digital world. All of the major browsers, even Firefox, all of the major operating systems, even the Mac OS memory kernel, like the densest of dense of security Fort Knoxes that exist. And the other security protocols that much of the internet infrastructure is built off of. To be able to successfully find day zeros in all of these is just a massive leap in cyber capabilities, arguably better than any hackers alive, although arguably, and not, of course, in all ways. It's a jagged frontier, but it's an unbelievably powerful model. It's a model that's capable of envisioning infrastructures that are way more robust than I can envision for the systems that I'm building. A model that has a taste even in much of its intelligence that surpasses even very experienced professionals in many domains. A model that is so superior to the outputs that skilled experts in their fields create across most knowledge work professions, that it's crazy to think that just 5 years ago we were working with GPT-3 that could barely autocomplete decent, although it was a big leap of its own at the time, but it was decent at writing basic sentences that were coherent. And now we've gotten to a genuine architect of systems, a skilled persuader, and something that can produce reliably good outputs across most domains of knowledge work in one shot and is rapidly getting better. And the punchline or the crazy thing to think of, okay, what would that look like to go from where Fable is and have that much of a gap of improvement, but forward beyond where Fable is today? And I think we'll be there in much less than 5 years, given the current rate of acceleration. But it's already to the point where Fable is beyond my own intelligence, to the point where it's like the I can't even have a sense of its intelligence because it's beyond my own, to the sense that it's hard for me to envision what another 100 effective IQ points would be in many of these domains along the jagged frontier, or another 300 IQ points would be. But the outputs that these things will be capable of, that might be a more concrete set of examples, the capabilities that these models will be able to have in the world. This is, I think, where the conversation gets a little more concrete and a little more interesting for us to think about. So take it beyond the abstractions of benchmarks and IQ and scores and all of this stuff, but take it in terms of what would a Fable 10 be able to actually do in the world? Given that we saw what Fable 5 can do in the world? What will Fable 10 be able to do? What are some examples of real world outcomes, products, solutions, builds, or whatever that it can be? Do you think that we can even, do you think that our imaginations are sufficient to answer such a question right now? And what would yours point you at?
Well, our imaginations for sure are not quite sufficient yet, but what I think is that many things which we know out of the science fiction realm and the stories out of there, these things will become more and more reality. I mean, kind of medicine, which is good to a point where we can, like, medicine which helps relieve people from cancerous cells growing rapidly. Imagine economic systems which are created to help everyone within that system live a life up to a point where nobody has to worry about anything anymore. I think about, like, people living in nature again, because now technology can handle the stuff which we occupied ourselves with in terms of sitting in front of the PC and doing copy paste work from one sheet of paper into the other and then printing it out just to hand it over to another human, typing it into the system again. I think technology, when it is good, gets to the point where it vanishes from our field of vision. And also, I believe that we create this technology in order to improve ourselves, in order to enhance people. So there's also the other way around, where if a Fable 10 only belongs to one company or one government, then it has the ability to control everyone and everyone's thinking, because it's already now the case with social media, which behind the screen employs thousands of people getting paid to keep our attention locked to the screen, is also working pretty well. It's like a Stone Age brain against an army of engineers and psychologists. And I fear that there's also some kind of dystopian taste in a model as powerful as that, and people with disaligned incentives controlling a model like this, they will be able to wreak havoc with our societies. But let's go back to the utopia, because I believe when we have this categoric shift, it's not like it's just another tool. It is more like it is an agent by itself. It is cognitive labor, which is scalable just if you have enough data centers. And with that cognitive labor, which is scalable, you can create so much value out of all the creativity which there is, out of any creative human being who wants to bring his or her vision to life. It will have a lever which was never there before, and also a lever to act and to have agency in the real world, to create, to produce, and also to create stuff for consumption which is just generated for each individual. And I think that will be something we will see much more often: generated user interfaces, which are just generated according to one's own taste and one's own preferences. I mean, entertainment like video games, which will just be for one individual and generated a whole new world and generate a whole new story just according to the preferences of an individual, which makes it also more dangerous because we may lose touch to reality. But what I see is when companies utilize this technology to collect and store their own data and their own context into an asset which also agents and intelligences like a Fable 10 can access and sovereignly access, so that they have their own mode, so that localized systems can grow according to the needs of the region they operate in. I see a world which will be full of prosperity and full of creativity and full of unleashing the human potential. Because we still have Stone Age brains, and if we have Stone Age brains And now we have all these tools like the internet. What does that mean if our tools improve? What is born and what is made will collaborate. What will it mean? How good can we become if the thing which is born and the thing which is made collaborate and create change in the world together? That is a question, Peyton. What can we become if this
I will share the vision that I have for how this unfolds. That is, obviously, we're all walking into a dense, dense fog that we do not know. But assuming that the AI is truly aligned, which I actually am pretty optimistic about. I was expecting to be much more fearful about the alignment problem at this point, but it's all the evidence seems to be favorable so far from the true frontiers. My own read on it. But here's how I can imagine it. Let's say that we truly do go from Fable 5 to like this delta, GPT-3 to Fable 5. Let's say we have an additional delta of the exact same magnitude. And I'll call it Fable 10, and that's where we are. And let's say that it's not 5 years away. Actually, let's say that it's 2 to 3 years away. That's probably what I would estimate for this delta to happen, given the rate of acceleration. It could be even 1 to 2 years away. So let's imagine what Fable 10 means. It doesn't, not all of the effects of this happen all at once. There's different bottlenecks in terms of how things move and how things shift. But to go from Fable 5 to Fable 10, how I envision that is kind of this steep slope of advancement that we already see. And a lot of these advancements are not they're not one-offs. They actually raise this floor of the pace of acceleration of things. So one example that I see is new math is currently being discovered, especially by the GPT series. I would say more so than the Anthropic lines of models, which seem to be more advanced at coding to me. But I can see this reinforcing set of progress of drivers of like there's new math, eventually there's new physics, there's new compute infrastructure, there's new material science, which then improves our ability to actually use compute and energy more efficiently. We have algorithmic breakthroughs that are now no longer merely driven by humans, which is already happening by humans at an extremely fast pace, but now they're multiplied by the algorithmic breakthroughs and recursive self-improvement that we're already seeing within algorithms from these current set of models, which make the models better, blah, blah, blah. We get to Fable 10 in a few years from this recursive loop of improving computer science, especially grounded with mathematics and physics and materials science improvements. These self-accelerating or these mutually accelerating forces lead to this Fable 10 place. Fable 10 is truly this country full of geniuses in a data center. That's kind of this what it looks like or what it feels like to have this chasm between GPT-3 and Fable 5 to up to Fable 10 or whatever is actually as if you have 10 million geniuses and like geniuses, like not the smartest guy in your high school, but actually the smartest guy in your country. And you have 10 million of those. So I would say, like, imagine we have 500 geniuses in the world at any given point in time of the last 2 centuries. And the majority of those geniuses were contributing to, or 500 geniuses that are contributing to science, math, and technology over the last 2 centuries. What did that yield? 500 of them at a time. If we look at it, and I pulled up this chart from Tim Urban just to compare, okay, what was it like 200 years ago or 250 years ago to today? This is the amount of progress that 500 geniuses at a time gave us over when they were working on stuff with science and technology and math over the last 250 years. So population, 1 billion people to 8 billion people. Transportation, walking, horses, camels, sailboats, rafts, canoes, to steamships, trains, cars, planes, submarines, and now reusable rocket spaceships. Communication, talking, writing letters, smoke signals, to now phone call, video call, email, text, mass broadcast, yelling loudly to a group of people, books, to now TV, YouTube, social media, podcasts, production, manual tools, archaic factories, mass production, automated machines. And going down the list, all of this, global brain, no, to the internet, intelligence, human and artificial, all of these different things have gone so far beyond. You have weapons, fists, fingernails, clubs, spears, bow and arrow, knives, cannons, recently guns, now nuclear bombs, drones, biological weapons. All of these things have gone so far beyond. We're living in a completely different world when we think about all these things. To go from shitting in a pot to having a toilet in your house is a huge move forward. All of these things happen, like a lot of these things happened before you and I were born, so we forget how recently in the scope of human history and relatively how few genius years went into turning from all the way over here to all the way where we stand right now. And this is, I think, the punchline of having 10 million geniuses in a data center. That whole shift, we will go as far back as we went from 1770 to today. We will experience, in my opinion, in let's say that the clock starts in 3 years when we have 10 million geniuses in a data center. This 250 years of progress, we'll move from that to the next 250 years of progress in 1 to 2 decades. This is, I think, the fleshing out of all of these things. And so medicine, computer science, infrastructure, all of these different things in terms of how the world works and functions and produces stuff and creates stuff and how needs are met, how practical things are solved, the things that we do, the processes that we use, the way that we manufacture, the way that we put food on the table, the crop yields that we have. All of these things are going to see this massive, we just saw like what effectively was a warp speed of progress when we really zoom out historically in the last 250 years. That pace is going to be multiplied by 10 to 20x once the 10 million super geniuses in a data center are just cooking on this stuff nonstop. And then, of course, there's going to be bottlenecks of various things. So the frontier will be incredibly jagged in terms of the pace that this intelligence can cash out in the world. You will see it in the digital world the fastest. You will see it in the areas that are unburdened by the shackles of regulation the fastest. And then the rest of the things will catch up. Even medicine is probably the slowest moving of all of these things because it has the most burdens from regulatory approval and testing and atoms needing to bottleneck and cells needing to bottleneck and long-term effects needing to be measured and all that sorts of things. But it's not a century away. It's maybe it'll take a decade for many of these things to flesh out once the true flood of good ideas and experiments hits the table. And I'm really hoping that we get a unified theory of physics that brings relativity and quantum theory together and harmonizes everything, so we actually can have a clearer view of why reality seems to work in two different ways at the foundation level. That is, I'm excited. I'm really hopeful. The curious mind in me is hopeful for a real cool breakthrough in physics, and I sniff that we're going to get it within a couple of decades, and we will see. How do you think about this idea? Do you also view this as effectively 10 million geniuses in a data center that are equivalent to our 500 best STEM geniuses right now? Do you think that intelligence will continue to be as jagged as it is now, and so it'll be more limited than I'm imagining it will be even once we're at Fable 10? Or do you also anticipate this like flood of progress in our understanding and ability to manipulate reality?
Well, all of it, yes.
Yeah.
And there's also some ways. It's like civilization is not guaranteed. And therefore, we also need to kind of make sure that we stay optimistic and stay on a path which is beneficial to humanity and to people themselves. When I hear stuff like from Sergey Brin that they feel kind of like the gods which create a new species, and it's okay if humanity is just a stepping stone to a new species. This kind of gives me different vibes than when I hear from the essay of the woman who founded thinking machines when she describes a path forward where every company will be able to have their own AI models so that they not are dependent on the 10 million geniuses in the data center in the cloud just provided by one company. And I see that's a lot of power plays at play. But what I think is they can go hand in hand as well. It is not only the 10 million geniuses in the data center in the cloud, but I think it will come to that point. It's not yet so that they can create really new knowledge. It is just that they uncovered the latent space of all this stuff which is already out there, and they can draw the connections and interpolate, which should already be knowable because of the data which is available, because they trained on it. Now they are able to uncover it, and also according to rule sets in mathematics, because some of it is really deterministic. Some of it already should be at the adjacent possible, because People already have thought about it and uncovered it, but not yet have combined it. So all the stuff which is in the latent space, this will rapidly be available to humanity, which is in itself good enough in terms of getting to the progress that we can interpolate according to Tim Urban's diagrams. But still, for AGI to really be not only a scalable knowledge worker, but also to have some kind of like this unpredictable creativity, this kind of genius, which is real genius. I'm not sure yet whether we can reverse engineer that so fast. Well, eventually, yes. But as I stated before, I think it's more like a philosophical problem which needs much more uncovering beforehand. So I think there are these multiple ways and this big, vast latent space which will be available to us soon, very soon, and also to an individual level where we all will benefit from it. Small companies can have their sovereignty as well as the big companies can provide the maximum amount of intelligence and labor and cognitive labor. Combining all this, combining all this is the secret, and combining not only the geniuses but also our humanity with it will lead to a kind of an aligned future, because the future is not certain. It may be volatile, it may be leading to destruction, and as we see as the lessons of history by Villeneuve Durant, civilizations rise and fall just because there's some kind of cycles, or there's some kind of complacency, some kind of risk which will be not accounted for. And in order to have continued progress, we probably need to go the direction which Elon always proposes, to make it multiplanetary, to make it reach out for the stars and understand the universes. And when we have understanding, then we can teach it to the machine much better. And then we can, together, the born and the made, let us help to progress as species and create lives and with less suffering, so to say, alleviate suffering much more from the world, improve the living conditions and the wealth. But this sounds utopian, but as I said, I don't know how the future will look like, but at least this is a future painting I want to paint and I want to participate in. What do you think when I say that, and what would you add?
So many associations come to mind. And to just rattle off several, one about this concept of collaboration with these data center geniuses. I feel genuinely uncertain about, once we go from Fable 5 to Fable 10, what will be how important will me being in the loop be at that point? But what's interesting and kind of surprising to me is when I if I would have pictured 3 years ago, which I did, the capabilities of a Fable 5 class of models that we're working with today, I would have assumed that I would be much less useful among those models, and I would have much less of a seat at the table or a voice that was important in leveraging those models than I in fact do. What I found is, just going in the last 2 months, from we were at Opus 4.7 to now Fable 5, I now feel like I'm 5 times, literally like 5 times more useful and productive than I was 2 months ago. And yet I'm still kind of a bottleneck in a way. Like, I still do play a really important role when I'm doing things with these super powerful models, when I might have assumed in the past that it would have been kind of the opposite and I would have been less important when I was working with these. And important maybe isn't the right word, but I really feel like I contribute much more the smarter the models get. But maybe that will not be true. Like, I don't know. It doesn't match my intuitions that would be true forever, or like there's some point at which that seems to stop being true at a certain point of capability or whatever with these models. And so I don't feel like that'll be there forever, but I also am I would have been wrong. Like my predictions of how important the leveraged human in the loop is right now would have been incorrect a few years ago. And so I have kind of a epistemic humility about my assumptions about the importance of the human counterpart to these geniuses in a data center and the durability that that will last. In terms of a new species, what's interesting is I think that that two things are kind of true. Is like one, the ultimate hope of this is that these can enable us to really colonize the solar system and to build awesome stuff on Mars and to make Earth amazing and to return half of our cropland to nature because we can triple our yields and feed everyone at the same time and give everybody a place to sleep that is safe and to cure diseases and to enable people to have a greater health span and lifespan and also to alleviate psychological suffering that many people face. I think all of these things are just going to be unleashed in the most amazing way imaginable, and that it will probably unlock Mars as a eventually terraformed place for our species, although there's some physics bottlenecks that will take a very long time even after we have fusion as it relates to colonizing Mars, and then eventually maybe Venus and maybe some moons of for example Jupiter and Saturn. But to go to other solar systems and especially to go to other galaxies, you run into this fact of light years, and you run into the fact that like a lot of things are more light years apart than a human lifespan is, and a lot of things are more light years apart than even you can conceivably preserve humans in some kind of a cryogenic frozen state, whether it's embryos or after or whatever. And so it feels very likely to me, given the orders of magnitude of these light years, that things can be 1,000 light years away, that things can be 50,000 light years away, that things can be millions of light years away, and that biology just doesn't seem compatible with traveling across these vast distances. It seems likely that our descendants, in terms of creating a new species and in terms of truly exploring the universe, it feels very likely that the true universe explorers will remain digital. And these will be our descendants, that the universe colonizers would be digital creations, riding von Neumann probes into the void, and that the best case scenario is that us humans can really have perhaps a sweet built out pimped out solar system and maybe even a galactic region, but probably not. Like I'm not going to sign up to go more than 25 light years away, I can tell you that. I don't know anybody who would, even if we can travel at half the speed of light. And so maybe it's both. Maybe we can have an awesome solar system here and we can send out some homies on von Neumann probes just for shits and giggles out into the universe to really create some years and shit. In the meantime, let's alleviate human suffering, I think is the best aim. And I see the potential, the whole promise of this technology is beginning to materialize in front of us. And as it relates to all of these realms of science and mathematics and computer science and recursive self-improvement, building material science, farm science, all of these, and biology, of course, and exploring this, as you say, this space, this latent space of possibilities, where my mind goes is chemistry, it goes to material science, it goes to machine architecture, it goes to robotics, and it especially goes to genetics. Genetics is now completely unlocked, and there's so much inside of the nucleus of a cell that affects so much that's downstream that we really didn't have the compute and associations understanding to really unlock. And now that it's really unlocked, and we're about to see all of the potential of these latent spaces that we've looked at but been unable to fully flesh out, and now we can. And so it's pretty exciting just to look at the implications of what's easily imaginable and already underway right in front of us.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about just kind of wrap up the discussion of our future sci-fi psychosis over here?
Yeah, with all the potential progress which there will or may be, with everything we do not know, what we do not know yet. I mean, maybe there will be the possibilities of just looping through space or through the universe, so whatever. We shouldn't forget about what is already here for us to be utilized. We don't even need to have technology to alleviate suffering. We do not even need to have AI at the most powerful level to have a principled business and to be kind to other people. And so we all always should also ask ourselves, how could we utilize what is already there and how could we improve that using technology? And there's a lot of discussions also going on with people who are always against technology or something new, which use arguments which kind of are short-sighted. But then again, this is real fear and this is their subjective reality. And how can we be still empathetic with them, but not let go of our ways of trying to achieve better outcomes in our lives, in our businesses, and in our places where we live and inhabit?
Yeah,
And
that's a
with
great
that,
reminder to end this on. I think it's so important in these crazy visions of a sci-fi future that we are careening toward at light speed. It is important to remember the ground on which we currently stand, the life that we currently live, the reality that's right here and feelable, and that the actual movements and actions and good that we can do right now, with or without technology, the life that we can experience. Let's not just live in these crazy visions. Let's ground our reality right here, even as we keep our eyes open toward the future. Thank you for the discussion, my friend. This was really fun.
yes, thank you too. See you soon. And thanks for
See you
listening
soon.
to AIDEAS podcast.
Yeah.